Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first quarterly partner call of 2018. We are making it the year of becoming an integration expert, so we've got quite a different type of partner call for you this day, and so we're pretty excited to show you what we have. So just to go over some general housekeeping, today's audio is only available through your PC. There is no dial-in information. So if you cannot hear this and you do not have audio on your computer, you will receive a recorded version of this after the airing of this, probably by Monday of next week. You can adjust sound, participate in Q&A. We encourage as many questions as possible, so please let those flow on into us, and we will answer all of your questions at the conclusion of the presentation. So today's agenda, we'll go through our connector and product updates with Paul Varley. We have Legends of the Integration Expert. It'll be hosted by Lynn Harrington with a special guest, TJ McDowell of Datix. We've got a Salesforce update from Robin Dupre and a sales and marketing update from myself, Jenaya Devan. And lastly, we will be taking all questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will pass the baton over to Paul Varley for our connector and product updates. Thank you, Paul.
Great. Thanks, Jenaya.
You're welcome.
So let's start with the Scribe Online platform. We are just about to release the spring release. It's scheduled for April 6th, which is 3 weeks from tomorrow. And in fact, you can get all of the information, even more details than I have on the slide, on the Success community. We just posted an announcement there with all the release notes earlier this week. So you can take a look at that for all the details. But I wanted to highlight the 3 main new functionality features that are in this spring release. A number of these are things that people have asked for, and so I think we're going to see a lot of good use of these features. The first is revision control for your Scribe Online maps. And I'm sure you understand this concept from using various cloud applications that automatically save your work and keep past versions that you can go back to. So essentially what's happening in this release is we're introducing the ability of the platform to keep a snapshot of all of your saved maps. And it's going to keep track of who changed the map. You can even put comments. There's a little box at the bottom of the mapping screen now where you can put in revision comments. So you might say, well, I made this change on such and such a date, although it keeps the date for you anyway. And this is why, and this is what it's doing, that sort of thing. So we're recording all of that information in the Scribe Online database and then giving you visibility into the historical versions of your maps, and then the ability to roll back to an earlier version if you want. So this is great if you make a change to a map that has some unintentional side effect. It breaks something downstream, let's say, and you want to go back to an earlier version. Prior to this, you could do that, but you have to actually export maps manually, save them somewhere, and then re-import them. Or I did a blog earlier this year about how you could use the platform API connector to do the same kind of thing, save maps in a database. But now with this release, we're going to have it in the platform, in the product, which is great. Second thing that I wanted to highlight in this release is the ability to access your agent logs in the cloud. So if you're using an on-premise agent and you want to get access to that, of course, from the beginning of time, you're always able to go to that agent machine and drill down into the folder and extract the log files that way. But in some cases, as a user of Scribe Online or as a consultant on a project, you may not have access to that machine. And so now you're able to get at those log files through the UI. So much more convenient than having to get access to the machine itself. And then the third thing I wanted to highlight, it probably takes the most explanation. I don't know if you're all familiar with the Open API specification. You may know it as Swagger. That's the old name for it. But it's a way of describing and documenting a REST API. And so we're adding a view on top of request reply maps that present the map information as an open API specification. And so that makes it much easier to use a request reply map programmatically inside of another application. A good example would be Microsoft Flow and Logic Apps. Both of them have the ability to create an HTTP connection against an open API specification. So if you were working with something inside of Flow or Logic Apps and you wanted to tie in something in Scribe Online that's using a request reply map, with this release it's going to be much easier to do that, because you can just take the open API specification that Scribe Online is going to give you and paste that in to your Flow or your Logic app, and it will understand exactly what the request reply map does, what fields it's looking for in terms of the request, and what data it's providing back, so that you can then take those fields that you're getting back from the map and use it in whatever application. So Flow and Logic Apps are one example of things that can understand open API specification. There are lots of other things out there that you might want to use. And I know I've just kind of given you a brief overview of how to do that. We're going to have more materials and instructions on how to use that as the release comes out next month. So just kind of file that away in your mind. If it's something you're interested in doing, we can help you with how to do that. And as I said, this release is scheduled for April 6th, so it's coming in just a few weeks. All right, let's look at connectors. At the last quarterly call, if you were on in December, I told you about a new partnership that we have with a company called CData, which is a company that makes drivers, libraries, if you will, for lots of different applications. They have drivers for over 100 different applications. We've licensed their entire library, and we're going through a process of putting wrappers around those drivers to make them into Scribe Online connectors. The first one we did is the Postgres database connector. You're probably familiar with Postgres. It's the fourth most common database application on the internet after Microsoft, MySQL, and Oracle, which of course we already have all those connectors in our platform. So this is addressing the fourth most common database out there. And it's very much like the connectors that you are used to. You've got source and target operations. It works with cloud and on-premise agents. You can even do native query, so you can do all kinds of things in SQL with joining tables, filtering, and so on. And it's included in all of the integration service tiers, just like the other database connectors. You can go to the marketplace today and add it. Postgres is an open source database, so if you want to try it out, it's available for free on the internet. You can install it and try it out, try our connector if you're interested in that. All right, so the next one is also a CData connector. And this one is in engineering right now, but it should be out in the next week or two. It's a Google Analytics connector. And this one's a little bit different in that it's a source-only application. When you think about it, it makes sense. Google Analytics is an application that you use to analyze website traffic. So you can install a bit of code on your website that's going to relay information to Google. Google is going to track things like how many people are visiting, how many pages they view, which pages they're viewing, where they're coming from, if they're coming from a Google search or a referring page, a whole wealth of information. And they give you a UI to analyze it, but you might, in some cases, want to be able to pull that data into some other application. And so this is where this connector comes in. It can connect to your Google Analytics environment and pull back whatever data out of your data set on your website that you're interested in doing. On this one, because of the way the authentication works, it's only supported on on-premise agents right now. We're looking for a way to make it work with cloud agents, but that's been a little bit tricky. So because of the thing, you actually have to install a certificate on the agent machine, which is why for now it's only supported with on-premise agents. Like Postgres, there is a native query option, what you'll find is this is going to be a theme with a lot of these CData connectors, because CData's MO is to turn various APIs into making them looking like a database. So native query is an option on most of their libraries that we're going to be taking advantage of in most cases. So in this case, native query just allows you to do those joining and filtering type operations that will limit the data that comes back. You can imagine, especially on a big website, you could have lots and lots of data. You might only want a small piece of it. And this one is also included in all of the integration service tiers. And the third one I was going to share with you today is also a CData connector that is also in development and should be out next month if all goes as expected. And this is the NetSuite connector. Now, you know that we have a NetSuite connector in the marketplace today. The Scribe connector that we have now, it has a limited number of entities that it supports. I think it's maybe 12 or 15 entities. The main difference between the Scribe NetSuite connector and this new CData connector is the breadth of entities. Because the CData NetSuite connector supports over 100 different entities. It supports pretty much the full spectrum of all the NetSuite entities that are out there. So if you've used our connector before and you felt like, well, it's great, but I wish it had such and such an entity supported because I want to get to that and I need to do the integration. That's where you're going to want to come and take a look at this one because of the breadth that's involved. And you can, of course, use the two together with Scribe Online Maps. You can have as many connections as you want. So you may find that you just want to use this to augment a map that you already have that's using NetSuite. You might add this to an existing integration that you're doing. As far as the tiers are concerned, this is offered in the IS standard tier and above, so it's basically in the same slot that our current NetSuite connector is in. And like I said, it's planned for next month, so it should be out soon. Okay, and then finally, and I realize I'm introducing a lot of new connectivity to you here, so hold on to your hats, if you will, but we also have a REST connector that is planned for the spring release. So again, in about 3 weeks, we're going to have generic REST connectivity. And the most important thing to know about this new REST connector is that it does require the OpenAPI specification, and that is version 2, which is also known as Swagger version 2. I mentioned that 5 or 10 minutes ago when I was talking about the feature in the request reply endpoints for Scribe Online. We're using that same standard in our REST connector because REST, if you think about it, is really a set of guidelines. And what the OpenAPI specification does is it normalizes that and puts it into a form that another machine can read and understand. So if you're working with an API that has that OpenAPI specification, that's great. If not, if you're working with a REST API that doesn't have it, you can actually construct your own OpenAPI specification for a REST API. And there are instructions on the internet on how to do that. We'll also be providing more information on where to go to find those tutorials when we release this connector. But that's the most important thing. If you don't remember anything else I said about the REST connector, just remember that it does require this OpenAPI specification. You can't use it with any REST endpoint without having that. As far as authentication options, the connector supports both basic auth, which would be username and password, as well as OAuth. The first iteration supports JSON payloads. We do have plans to extend that in the future. Source and target operations, cloud and on-premise agents. And like the NetSuite connector, it's going to be included in the IS standard tier and above. And like I said, April 6th is currently the planned release date for this one. So that's 4 new connectors that are either already out or coming within the next month or so. And then I also wanted to point out some updates that we're doing to existing connectors. We've got a release of the HubSpot connector coming next month that's going to add support for a number of additional entities beyond the ones that we already have. Pipeline, subscription type, subscription status, and then we're adding a new engagement type, which is the incoming email type. We're also allowing the use of the create date field for net change. And like I said, that's planned for next month. And then finally, the Microsoft Dynamics 365 Sales and Service, aka CRM connector, will be adding support for SDK version 9 and multi-pick lists, and that is also planned for next month. And with that, I will turn things over to Lynn to take the next section.
Great, thanks, Paul. Hello, everybody. Legends of Integration Experts will be a new component of this fall going forward. It's something that we have put in place here in support of our Integration Expert goal this year, and really the year of the Integration Expert is about both Scribe and our partners, our entire ecosystem actually becoming that much more of an expert over the next 12 months or during this entire year around integration. And so in coming up with this particular series, we wanted to keep in mind, though, what the audience is here at within this partner call. And so we are going to choose legends, and there are some of you that are legends out there in our ecosystem around integration and the ways that you've really pushed our applications and really pushed your customers' requirements around integration. So we wanted to highlight those legends, and we're going to focus on topics that we believe would address one of two needs for our partners. That is, they are something that would help you to either streamline your business so that you could make your integration projects that much more profitable to your business, maybe save time, save effort, things like that. The other that we'll look at is there a way that you could add value to the integrations that you're offering these customers so that you could maybe charge more, maybe turn it into a more of a subscription-based pricing, do some things like that to make it, again, a more profitable revenue stream to your business. So with that being said, we had to make a selection on our first integration expert, and I'm really excited with the selection that we made. We're going to, I'm doing an introduction here around TJ McDowell, and before I go into all of the details, and you see some of them here on the slide of what makes him an expert, you can see that he's got 15 years of experience building integration solutions, and a lot of that was outside of Scribe before he ever came into the Scribe ecosystem, but he very quickly became a Scribe MVP. And TJ has really done a combination of building Scribe integrations one-off, as well as building them as a packaged, repeatable solution. He's built a lot of Scribe Online connectors, and they're really good. Some of them we resell, so they look like a Scribe connector to you, but actually have been built by Datix. And he also, what I think is most exciting, and one of the reasons that his name came up really at the beginning, is TJ's the type that he understands that Scribe Online is a platform, and just because integration services or IS doesn't have a capability, he knows that that's not a dead end for him, that he is able to extend the platform and build all kinds of tools and utilities to make it, again, something that streamlines their business and adds more value to their customers' integrations. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to TJ McDowell, who's going to share just one of these tools that he built and take you through why he built it, and you'll understand why we selected TJ, I think, after you hear him go through his presentation as well. So with that, TJ, you're on.
Perfect. Well, I'm very excited to be here today. And in fact, I think I just heard that I reached legendary status, is what it sounds like, which is a great way to start a call. I love it. I love it. So with that being said, I'm going to live up to that today with one of my favorite connectors, really kind of part of the suite of connectors that is our go-to for solving some of the challenges that we run into with the Scribe platform, where, like Lynn said, maybe the functionality we need doesn't look like it's there yet, but what we know is that it's just a connector away, and then we've got all this functionality at our fingertips. So to kind of set up what this particular connector does, I think we all have integration challenges that we run into. And I'm going to talk about 3 of those challenges today, and how one of the connectors in the micro connector suite that we've built out really helps to alleviate these issues and to end up allowing us to produce elegant solutions. So, first scenario is, especially during initial data load, and we cannot be alone in this. We have massive amounts of data maybe coming in from whatever system, and whether that's a CRM like Salesforce where there's just a ton of data and you're running up against API stuff, or maybe in our case maybe an ERP that just has years of data and you can't miss any of the data, right? So, but what if you wanted to take those bit by bit, right? So maybe 100 at a time. How would you solve that? We've tried solving it other ways, and it's a pain. Let me just process all my A customers. And then you're going and updating your map 100 times. So that's one of the scenarios. Next one, how do I store or retrieve map run specific values? So in other words, I'm running for one map, and I've got just something I ran at the beginning of the map that I need to store off and get later. But just for that map run, it doesn't need to have, in computer science we call it scoping. So I'll introduce like a little nerd term, and if you guys didn't know it, you can impress all your friends. It's called a variable scope. And so we're going to give it a scope of a map run. And then lastly, I need to have access to, and so here's another awesome part, the last modified date in the map. So what we know from Scribe Level 2 training, which everybody is moving towards, right, is that Scribe last run date, the default behavior is that it will look at the maximum date that it's seen come across for your high water mark, and it will say, that's now my last run date for my next map run. Well, what if you don't want that, right? And so there are certain scenarios where you might want a little different logic. And so there's actually a way using one of our connectors that you can expose out what that last modified date is, so you can use that throughout the map. And a lot of these things, are things that you can do maybe in other ways, or things that are developing under the platform. But I think the thing that I really want to drive home is that you don't have to wait for someone else to do it. It's all at your fingertips. And so that's kind of the incredible power behind the Scribe Connector Development Kit, which we love. Magic number. What better way to start a legendary conversation than with magic number? It's actually one of my favorite connectors. So we talked about processing in batches of 100, right? And so magic number is a connector where you can specify, you can see here, a starting number and an ending number. And the idea is this would be your main query block. And what it would do is it would spit out 100 rows here. And you'd be able to access them one by one. And we actually have, we've got other connectors that kind of allow us to pull the next in line of a data element. And so that would be used in conjunction with magic number. But think of processes where you want to do 100 of something, or 200 of something, or maybe 1 of something, right? By specifying the starting and ending number, we create that many elements that we can use in the inner workings of a map. All right, so magic number, couple things just to set the stage a little bit for this. It's just one of the components in our Scribe Productivity Pack. It happens to be one of my favorite, but it's certainly not the only one. It creates a data set on the fly. So we talked about that 1 to 100. It's not real data. You just invent it on the fly. You say, I'm going to have 100 elements, and then it pops out 100 different rows. And so you can see that going through your debug, and you can go one by one, and then it allows you to access what current number you're on. It's great. So there is no underlying data source, so this can be very useful, especially in a testing scenario. Maybe a quick demo or things like that where you don't necessarily want to go in and add a new connection to a system that might or might not be available. You can use magic number to kind of simulate a data flow inside of Scribe. And then we have that starting and ending number as the filter values like you saw in the first slide, and that allows you to specify the size of that data set. In other words, the number of rows that will be returned. So, debugging. There's more here than what you might have thought would have been in there. It's because it does all kinds of magic. It's great. So we've got the starting and ending number, which is the filter value that you put in to start off with. We've got, I'm going to skip over one for right now. We've got current number. That's just the row that you're on right now. So that will go 1, then 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 100 in this scenario. I'm going to go back now to that execution context ID. Just realize that that's just a GUID that gets generated. You guys say GUID or GUID? Whatever. GUID's the right way to say it, according to me. So that's what we're going to say for this presentation. So we've got your execution context ID, and you'll have one per row. We're going to use that concept to solve a later problem here, and then you're going to see how valuable that GUID is. The high watermark, that's just the high watermark that came in. We'll talk a little bit about that here in just a minute as well. And then last run date came through as null. So we will move on here to the high watermark part. So we've now solved how to do 100 of something, right? Now we're going to say, okay, what if I wanted to know, without doing any API calls or anything special, what my high watermark was at the beginning of this map, right? And so maybe I've got two different data sets that I'm interested in querying, right? Instead of one root query, we can have it hand through that same to two different queries, or we can add in kind of like a grace period, right? So if your logic requires some kind of grace period so that it can pull back 5 additional seconds or 10 additional seconds from the actual marked time. So all we need to do here is use magic number again. We go to net change, and then we choose the high watermark column. And so by doing that, what's going to happen is it's going to drop that high watermark at the beginning of the map down into that, and we'll have access to that field moving forward in the map. And so again, that is accessible to any block later in the map. In the inner portion of the map, that is yours to use. You're welcome to track it, to do whatever you want to with it. All right, variable scope. It's a little bit small, but it doesn't decrease the importance of this. This is something that is incredible. The variable scoping, you remember how I talked about that GUID, which we determined earlier, that was the way to say it. The scope ID, we have a variable object that requires a scope, right? And that scope ID is that execution context ID. And the way that it works is we define the first block of a map as magic number, and what we do is we give it a starting number and an ending number of 1. And what happens is it generates us a context ID that's valid for the duration of the map. And so we can define variables. You see here we're defining a myvar, very eloquently named myvar. We've never used that before, right? But with whatever variable you're wanting to store, you know, whether that's maybe first name, and you're wanting to kind of maybe track that and inside of a loop have certain logic to say, you know, I want to store this off if this is, you know, this is the condition. And then we store it using that context ID so that we can use it later on in the map. And so that's how we give a variable scope to a variable where it will live for the duration of the map. Batch processing. Oh, this is like this year's favorite thing for me. We have got the ability now, and we've been experimenting with this more and more, especially with, a lot of our modern platforms have things like API limits, right? And so we think of Salesforce being the biggest one for me that I typically deal with, where we want to send things through in batches, right? We don't want to send through a create that does one at a time. If we can avoid it, we want to batch things up. So what we can actually do here is we can use magic number to help out with batch processing. And actually there is an associated operation in our utility pack that does, you guys see the update/insert row key list. So what that's doing is it's adding values to a list one by one by one. And so at the end, what we'll end up with is a comma delimited list that we can do all kinds of stuff with. So we'll build up, I'm going to give you a Salesforce example. Let's say we've got orders 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll build up a string that is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, like we learned earlier in the call, how awesome request reply blocks are, or request reply maps are, we can send that through as an argument to a request reply map. And that request reply map then has a list of items that go into a batch, right? And we can kind of do different things with those. But that batch processing functionality, where we're building out the list that we're going to do something with later, you can do very easily with magic number. And actually here, I didn't even notice this. You guys are getting double the awesome, because we've got a query magic number at the as the base query, and then you've got a fetch magic number. So double cool. All right. So that is again, that's magic number, and just a few of the things that you can solve using magic number. There are a bunch of other scenarios that we use it for internally, but that should that's at least kind of get you started on thinking maybe about different ways that you can use connectors. We call them micro connectors inside of the Scribe Online platform.
Thank you, TJ. And I just wanted to follow up on that point because you've done some really, really exciting things here. So a lot of our ecosystem thinks of connectors really as something that, acts as a source or a target to extract or to write data. But these micro connectors that you all create and use are really tools and utilities. And you use our CDK, you build these tools and utilities, and then you can access them as you're working on maps. And am I correct on that? That's
Absolutely.
the way to think about it?
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Thank you, Lynn. That's a good clarifying point.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, TJ, and we appreciate your legendary support and use of our platform, and we look forward to seeing more coming from your productivity packs and from Datix.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, TJ. Thank you, Lynn. That was awesome. We're really excited about having this new segment of Legends join our quarterly call. It'll give new inspiration to our partners on ways and different ways to how to use and expand using Scribe and the platform and the CDK. So thank you again, TJ and Lynn. I appreciate that. Next up, we have Robin Dupre, and she's going to update us on our Salesforce ecosystem. Robin?
Thank you, Robin.
Passing that baton over to you. All right.
Hello, everyone. Specifically talking to our Salesforce partners for just a few minutes here. Guys, I wanted to join today to bring up something that we talked about several months ago, and that was an impending app that we were going to have on the App Exchange called Scribe Shadow. And hooray, Shadow is now available. We got through the App Exchange and released just last month. But as a reminder, I wanted to chat about, kind of the positioning for this for you and for your customers, because genuinely, I think probably almost all of your customers can leverage Shadow and quite effectively. So I'll go through today really what the opportunity is for your customer, the use cases we'll support here, how they can get it, and just a couple of other points to wrap up. So thinking about Shadow. one of the things that we're seeing at Scribe, and we're trying to make integration approachable, right? So we've done that with our UI. We continue to do that as we build out the platform to make it accessible and approachable to folks from analysts to admins on through developers, to make sure that this is a collaborative experience that folks can share in an organization. And the more and more integration we see in organizations, and it's a lot, we see a trend toward those organizations looking to distribute that integration workload across these varying users in the organization outside of IT, because we're creating an IT bottleneck. So in the Salesforce world, of course, the way that we do that is to appeal then to a Salesforce admin. And the way to appeal to a Salesforce admin is through meeting them where they live, which is inside of Salesforce, and providing them with that declarative interface that they're so accustomed to using. So that's what Shadow does, really. It's a Lightning app that they can install from the App Exchange that will enable them to replicate their Salesforce data to a SQL or MySQL database. Easy as pie, basically. They install it, and then they're ready to go once they get it set up. And I'll talk just about those couple steps in a few minutes. But what I wanted to cover was really the use cases. People would say why. So first and foremost, I think we want to talk about data governance, whether those are internal or external data governance strategies. Having an outside copy of your Salesforce data is going to, of course, help you to comply with those regulations. It's very simple. Second, and probably the one that we hear the most often, is to facilitate reporting and analytics. Obviously, there's a lot of applications in a corporate stack, and there's probably a larger initiative from some part of the organization to do external reports against that data. So Salesforce would probably just be one of the sources that they would draw from for those reports, whether they're using Power BI or Tableau or even Excel or SSRS, different reporting engines. They could connect directly to that replicated data store, or more likely they could use that as an intermediary so that they can do other kind of ETL routines against that data to combine it with data from other systems to then go ahead and do your analytics against, push it into a data warehouse. So for compliance and reporting and analytics, and then of course to even simplify integration with all of the integrations that we're seeing, some of which is between applications, some of which is Salesforce to Salesforce. There's a lot of data manipulation going on. Very often, other applications inside of the business require only read access to the Salesforce data. So there's really no reason to continue to query your production instance and keep pinging that API over and over again just to get that same data to bring out to other applications. So leveraging that replicated data as the source for some of those read-only integrations would be ideal for using this particular replicated database. So really those are the three big reasons that anybody really could use a replicated database off of their Salesforce data, and Shadow is the easiest way to make that happen. So compliance, analytics, simplifying your integration, of course, minimizing those API hits, which are also valuable to everyone. So simple, basically you're going to go to the App Exchange, search Scribe Shadow, install into your production instance of Salesforce. You're going to put in your credentials and authenticate against your Salesforce credentials. Point to your internet-facing SQL or MySQL and put in the credentials for that, and then simply let it run. Shadow's going to go ahead and check all of your credentials, start to sync up your entities into your replicated database, bring over that metadata, and then start that sync. It'll do that full sync once, that initial replication just once, and then it will run the net change every 24 hours. So once daily, that data that has changed would be updated into your replicated database. We do have a 90-day free trial, so everybody can get started using this today, and then it's only $300 annually, so $25 per organization per month. So not only approachable from ease of use perspective, but certainly from a high value, low cost perspective for pretty much every Salesforce customer. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and check it out on the App Exchange. I've provided a link here. You can just, again, go ahead and search it, use it internally, propose it to all of your customers, leverage that to maintain that data. We track soft deletes, as you know, in our replicated database. So should the event of something disastrous happen, we have that database to fall back on. We can access that data. I'm speaking to you from beautiful Atlanta here at Southeast Dreamin'. We've got a lot of events coming up in the next couple of months. We've got a couple of them under our belts with Tahoe Dreamin' and London's Calling, Southeast Dreamin' today, and then on to the world tours. We'll be in Amsterdam, New York City, and London between now and May, and then a few more Dreamin' coming up. I don't think we're going to actually hit Texas. I think we've changed on Texas since then, but definitely Midwest, onto Dreamforce, and Northeast in the fall. And just a reminder for all of you on the phone, our team is growing. In the U.S. here, we have myself, Nathan Richard, and Aaron Campbell, sits both on the U.S. team, and we've expanded into Europe as well. So we've got Steve Thornhill and Ozer in Europe, and I've provided everyone's contact details there. As you're working through opportunities, if we can help in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's all I have for today, Jenaya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. I totally, I was just going to say the same thing. I know you guys, you've been working with the Salesforce team diligently in the Salesforce ecosystem, and so partners out there, Salesforce partners, if you haven't connected with Scribe in a while, connect with Robin and her team. There's just so many awesome things that they were doing within Salesforce ecosystem, and so it's a good time to connect with them. Thank you, Robin. So next up is myself. I'll be going over the sales and marketing updates. First of all, we are launching a series of Scribe Online Level 2 trainings and certifications held here at our Manchester headquarters, as well as we are hosting one in Toronto, Canada, for our Canadian partners. And our first one is up April 16th through the 17th. Our Scribe Online Level 2 trainings are 2-day events. And so we do encourage you to, book ahead of time your travel. We will provide you with some accommodations if you are traveling to Manchester. And so you'll be able to register with the link below. October 31st through November 1st, that is a good one to note, that we are tagging that one on the heels of our Scribe User Conference. We have not quite solidified a location, whether that's going to be held in Boston, where our user conference will be, or if we are going to bring it back to Manchester. So I will keep you posted on any progress with that. So just to kind of recap all of our events ecosystem-wide, we've got Robin and Nate down in Atlanta right now at Southeast Dreamin'. We've got the Hitachi Solutions Customer Conference, and that is April 25th through the 27th in Denver, Colorado. We've got a Salesforce World Tour on April 26th. That's in New York. We will be sponsoring one of our partners, Stone Ridge Connect, April 26th, and I myself will be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then we are also doing, sponsoring Velocio Aspire Conference, and that's May 23rd, and that's in Columbus, Ohio. And just so that you guys have all of our information about our user conference, we are really excited this year about having one. As you know, we sponsor a user conference every other year, and this year is the year. We've had a ton of different great upgrades and changes to the platform, and we are super excited to bring our legends together and all of our integration experts and really sort of geek out about integration. So join us October 28th through the 30th. We're going to host this at Hotel Marlowe, and that's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. You only have 16 more days to save $200. So register early, get that early bird savings. Your registration total will be $995 if you register before March 31st. You will have access to a whole host of different educational sessions, keynotes, the welcome receptions, partner exhibits, dinner and entertainment. We're really excited to host this in a fashion where it's going to be beneficial for the users of Scribe, so in a consultant role and a developer's role and an admin role. So please register your team or get registered, save yourself $200, and we look forward to seeing you in October. If you'd like to become a sponsor, please contact John Joseph. Sponsorship opportunities are limited, but we do have them. So let us know if you're interested in sponsoring. We'd love to connect with you. And last but not least, Lynn sort of touched around the Scribe corporate goals, one of them, which I thought was a great way to sort of bring everything together. And so it's important, I think it's important for us to be transparent as a company to you guys about our corporate goals. And so one of our corporate goals this year is to become an integration expert. So as you've seen throughout the slide deck, this really is our year to becoming an integration expert. We're all well into our journey, and we're building a deeper understanding of integration and how we can really positively affect our customers, our end users, and most importantly, you, our partners. So as you heard from our integration expert, TJ McDowell, sharing our knowledge and the tools that we use to effectively deploy integration is really our first step in becoming an integration expert. Just so you know, internally, our entire team is getting Scribe Online certified. So, we require you to get certified, and we are doing that as well. Success 60. So it's really our goal of getting customers operational and referenceable in 60 days of their deployed implementation. This is definitely a Scribe goal. I'm sure as a business and an organization, something like this or similar to this goal is going to be, on your docket as well. We want to make sure that as a partner, your customers are happy, our customers are happy together. And so getting them successfully deployed and implemented is really one of our goals this year. Say it, do it, measure it, and improve it. Last but not least, so we're letting all of our actions speak louder than words. If we say it, we will do it. If we do it, we want to be able to measure the success of it. If we can measure it, we want to be able to improve it. So it's really a team effort for us to conquer all of these goals, but we really want to make sure that as an organization, where our goals are transparent to you as our partners, but that you can see where our efforts are going to this year. And so that's really a big part of 2018 for us. So with that being said, I will open up the floor for any questions. Before we go into questions, if you don't know who your contact is for Scribe, please reach out to us, sales@scribesoft.com. If you're interested in purchasing the magic number and the productivity pack from TJ McDowell and his team at Datix, please send him an email. It's tjmcdowell@datix.com.
Datix Inc.
Oh, sorry, DatixInc.com. Thank you.
Perfect.
You want to mess that one up. Awesome. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating. We'll go right into some questions. Paul, this would be for you. Does the REST API support hierarchical data?
Yeah, I'm going to interpret this question as, does the REST connector support hierarchical data? I think since that was what I was talking about. And the answer to that is yes, it does. So you will be able to work with hierarchical data in the REST connector.
Excellent. Another question. Can we use unique sequence number field in addition to check date?
With net change and
net change?
Probably, I'm guessing the high watermark.
Is this a question
this actually might be TJ.
Yeah. This is a question for
TJ, this is for you.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. It's about net change. Can we use unique sequence number field in addition to check date?
I think the answer to that question really has to do with how Scribe does its net change. And a net change is going to be on a date field. Although I have done integrations in the past where I think I know where you're headed with this, which is, if you've got kind of a high water mark in terms of you stack up all of your changes in like a logging table and go from there. So you certainly could, that's a great question. That may be like another good micro connector tweak. yeah, that's a great idea. I just don't think you can do it with the net change functionality that I demonstrated today. But my gut says that it wouldn't be too much of a tweak to get that to work. Whoever asked that question, if you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is right there on the screen, and I can help you work through that issue. We'll get that taken care of if that's something that would be useful to you.
Awesome. Thank you, TJ.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question for you, Paul. This person's asking, you said you can import-export from, for reversion control. Is there going to be a feature that will allow us to clone from org to org automatically?
Yes, that's also on our roadmap for this year. We're going to have the ability, when you belong to multiple organizations, this is something you can do with the API today, and it's been available for a couple of years, the ability to clone a solution from one org to another. We're adding that functionality to the UI this year. That is on the roadmap.
Excellent.
So a good scenario example for that would be enterprises often have separate development, test, and production organizations. And that would allow you to develop a solution in one organization and then easily move it to a test environment and then easily move it from there to production without export and import.
Yeah, excellent. Another question. Do you have any plans to add additional constructs for use in Scribe Online maps? For example, try catch blocks?
So the blocks that are associated with, they're linked to a connector. And there are certainly connectors that have unique blocks in them. You can define, or we can define, and anyone using our connector SDK can define unique block types. I'm not aware of any sort of generic blocks that we're planning this year. So
if I could, no, that's okay, because I do have one. So if you don't mind, the Subfire actually does support try-catch using request-reply blocks. And so if you want a try block, you can put it into a request-reply map. And if it receives an error, you can define another map that it goes to that's kind of like the catch. And then same thing with finally.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, TJ.
Thank you, TJ.
Sure.
Reseller console updates. Will we ever be able to see more info for child organizations, such as when a child org was created or deleted, and a summary of created and deleted child orgs for certain time periods?
So there is some additional functionality on the roadmap this year for parent-child organizations. I don't have a lot of details on exactly what's going to be on the screen, but conceptually, it will be a higher level view of your environment, including your child organizations. But I can't really speak to exactly what details will be on there. So I'd say stay tuned for more information on what that feature is going to have.
Yeah, I am taking a note on that, though, so I'll make sure it gets included in our, we have a PM system, a product management system, where we can put it product requests and tie it to a feature like this. So, right. So I will make sure that this gets added as something that we should review as we start to build out the requirements around that.
Excellent, thank you. How can a connector get access to the source entity name?
I think we've got some people trying to stump the...
These are great questions. Please keep them coming.
Oh, okay. No, here we go. Okay, I've got it. Unless you guys have it already, I'm ready to go.
The rescue again.
That's right. You can use API.
Tell us more about that.
All right. So as you guys already know, Scribe Online exposes out API, and you can actually hand through for example, a map ID, and you can get full information about that map using the API, including what your source connection is, what your blocks are, all those things are included in that API call. Just one web service call away. That's it.
You're saying, just so I understand what you're suggesting here, TJ, I think what you mean is if you're developing a connector for Scribe Online, you can, within the connector code, call the Scribe Online API to get the information that you're looking for.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, yep. And we've done that in connectors we've built out. Correct.
Nice.
That's awesome. Okay, one more question. Are the CData connectors as robust as the Scribebook connectors? What are the differences?
Well, as I said, the main difference is that the CData connectors are based on these libraries that we've licensed from CData, and we've wrapped them with our own logic that allows them to work within the Scribe Online platform. But we are selling them as Scribe connectors. So as far as the robustness and the reliability that you're used to, you should expect the same that you would from any other Scribe connector.
Cool. And just a question so that I think the majority can understand, how will they get notified about new connectors that we're putting in the marketplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a number of different ways. If you're in the product quite a bit, you've probably noticed that there's a little question mark in the lower right corner. And we use that for a number of things. You can use guides to understand how to use different features, but you'll also notice that you'll see notifications on there. You'll see like a little red circle with a number 1 or 2 or 3 in it, and then when you click on the question mark, it'll pop up and it'll give you a little feature announcement. And so that's one way. If you're in the product a lot, you'll be seeing those feature announcements as these are released. In fact, you've probably already seen the one for Postgres if you're in there a lot. That's one way. Another way, probably the best way to keep track of it, is through our success community. We have the ability that allows you to sign up for notifications when new features and new connectors are released. So if you put your email address into the community, you'll just get an email when these things come out. And then, of course, we have our monthly newsletter. So if you want to kind of get a monthly update on what's happening, you'll see those there. And of course, our blog is another place to look for this kind of thing. So lots of avenues.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. TJ, are you coming to our user conference?
I haven't signed my name up yet, but it reminds me every time I see it. I'm excited.
That's all right. Okay, awesome. So all of you guys, if you want to come and meet TJ McDowell and our team here, please sign up and register to come. Don't forget, you'll save $200 if you do it before March 31st. We'd love to have you here and host you. We are gracious hosts. Thank you, team. Lynn, Robin, Paul, and TJ, of course, our legendary integration expert. Can't thank you enough. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I appreciate your time. If you have any additional questions, please contact us at sales@scribesoft.com or contact your account manager. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.